Welcome back to Slice of News, where I cut you off a slice of news. Today marks 5 years since thousands of Donald Trump supporters, emboldened by a belief that he had actually won the 2020 election instead of Joe Biden, stormed the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. They believed that if they could disrupt by force the joint session of Congress that was counting the Electoral College votes, Joe Biden could not be officially certified as the incoming president, and Donald Trump would remain the president. It was undoubtedly a dark moment in American history, but it's a moment that those on the right have spent the last few years trying to downplay and outright erase from public consciousness. They've said that it was actually a peaceful protest, when in fact it was a violent insurrection against the United States that resulted in 5 casualties, including a Capitol police officer. It's hard to deny what it actually was for those of us who watched it live as it unfolded. It was a violent, angry mob that had been told by Donald Trump directly that if they didn't fight like hell, they wouldn't have a country anymore. Donald Trump called his supporters to violence, and they answered, desecrating a symbol of our nation, and to, in their own words, hang Mike Pence. They wanted to literally kill the vice president simply for doing his job and certifying that Donald Trump failed to win the 2020 election and certify Joe Biden as the next president of the United States. It should have been a turning point in American history when you saw in real time just how awful Donald Trump and his supporters were, and those who had committed those criminal acts should have been brought to justice. Instead, Donald Trump pardoned them. And of course he did. They worked for him. While they were not able to literally overturn the government and stop Joe Biden from being certified as the president, they did allow Donald Trump to rise to power again. So as a reward for a job well done, they were all given their pardons instead of the prison terms they all deserved. If those who participated in it could be so easily absolved for the crimes that they committed here, it really begs the question of what will stop this from happening again and resulting in far more than only 5 casualties. But I think just as bad as the actual events of January 6th, 2021, a literal insurrection against the United States government was, is that amongst the people, the feelings and resentment that led to January 6th have not gone away. You'd be hard-pressed to find any post about January 6th today that wasn't filled with comments blaming the liberals and the Democrats for January 6th and praising Ashley Babbitt, the protester who died during the insurrection, as a national hero. In a lot of ways, nothing has changed. They don't feel any shame or guilt over it. In fact, quite the opposite. They feel pride in it and feel like, if anything, the Democrats are the bad guys here. How can we as a nation improve when so many feel like January 6th was justified and the rioters did nothing wrong? Watching it happen 5 years ago was surreal. It seemed like something out of a movie because it couldn't possibly be actually happening. A bunch of Americans storming the Capitol building couldn't actually be happening, and yet it absolutely was. January 6th should have been the end. That should have been the moment that it was shown Donald Trump and his supporters were a danger to the nation as a whole and disqualified him permanently from ever serving in office again. Instead, the Supreme Court said he was not disqualified, allowing him to be able to run again for president and win in 2024. I think that's what disturbs me most about it, the fact that it should have changed everything, when in fact it changed absolutely nothing. It feels like nobody learned anything, and those Capitol Police who died as a result of the events of January 6th died for nothing. They and all the other people who were injured protecting the Capitol building and those within it deserve justice that at the moment feels like it will never come. I remember watching January 6th unfold and thinking, this is not what America is. This is not what America is about. But in those intervening 5 years, I think I've come to realize that it is exactly what America is and exactly what America is about. No, not all of it, but enough of it. Enough of it that it feels like it doesn't matter that there are good people who believe in the goodness of people and what's right. Because when the bad guys win, far too many cheer for them. In the aftermath of January 6th and after Joe Biden had been certified as president, many said, oh, I'm so glad that insurrection failed. But 5 years later, it sure doesn't feel like it did. Donald Trump rose to power once again on the backs of his blindly loyal supporters. Now, with more power than ever, with the added desire to seek retribution on any who stood in his way 5 years ago. It may have taken a few years, but they got everything they wanted in the end. And it's hard not to see that it's a great loss for America as a whole. It is genuinely hard to feel hopeful, especially in the wake of the complete lack of accountability and repercussions for the actions taken 5 years ago today. I suppose one small glimmer of hope is that their efforts to rebrand January 6th is something that should be forgotten from the national consciousness, because it really wasn't that big of a deal, will not work. Far too many people, myself included, were watching the live broadcast of what they were doing there at the Capitol that day. We won't forget what we saw, and we won't deny the truth of our eyes. It was an insurrection by a mob of radical fanatics who, if it weren't for the brave Capitol Police and other law enforcement officers, would absolutely have killed people, including the Vice President Mike Pence. January 6th was a stain on our nation, and not one that is so easily washed out. 5 years after the fact, we should be solemnly reflecting on it and committing ourselves as a nation to never allow something like that to happen again. Instead, we still have a vocal part of our population who not only feel vindicated in having done it, but absolutely, if given the chance, would do it all over again. And why wouldn't they? The president basically told them that what they did was right and that he will protect them from the consequences. January 6th was not just a literal physical attack on the U.S. Capitol. It was an attack on democracy and our identity as a country. And all these years later, it really is feeling like that attack succeeded. The country and the world that we live in today is a direct result of the events of that day, and we're all worse off for it. If January 6th was a test to see what we as a nation would be able to put up with and not united as one nation to decry, we failed it. Donald Trump and his supporters pushed the limits of our democracy to its limits and got away with it. Even if some future leader comes and decides to have them all punished for it, even if history will see this for what it truly was, which was an awful moment in our history that we should all be shamed for allowing to occur, the damage is already done and can never be fully undone. No amount of retroactive punishment can ever change what's occurred as a result. I'm not feeling just so frustrated, impotently so, because there's absolutely nothing I feel that can be done anymore. Can we learn from this? Sure, but it almost feels like, what's the point? A bunch of brainwashed fanatics can try to form a coup on the U.S. government and basically get away with it. All it really says is the rules don't matter. And when they do, it's never to the people who it should apply to. But also, being angry about it doesn't do anything either. Anger is not a productive emotion, but it's largely the only one I have left when I think back on January 6th. It opened the door for us to be a nation run by evil people who do evil things, supported by a part of our nation who believe those evil things are what is right. But what's truly right is the opposite of everything they believe and stand for. They loved Donald Trump and still love him because he reflects the hate that they have within their own hearts. And I think that's one of the saddest things that January 6th put on full display. There's a part of our country that truly are just bad people, that there are no redeemable qualities to be found in them. Some of them just aren't good people and never will be. And from now on, we have to live with the realization that they live among us and always have and always will. But it is precisely because we are surrounded by so much bad that we have to cling even tighter to the good. It's far too easy to fall into despair and despondence, especially when you see those who perpetrated January 6th literally go free without repercussion, and see the corrupt leader they fought for that day return to power, even more powerful and stronger than he was before. But losing yourself in those dark thoughts are exactly what those on the right want, because being lost in those feelings leads to helplessness, and helplessness leads to inaction, and inaction means that they win without even having to lift a finger. While many see the events of January 6, 2021 as a battle that they have won, and sometimes it's truly hard not to see it that way, their overall victory is a temporary one. Things will change, and they will get better, and eventually we will heal from the scars that January 6 inflicted on this country country. And while they may want to believe it is, the autocratic leaders that we have now are not permanent. We will get through this because this country is nothing if not resilient. And if January 6th taught us anything, is that the monsters are in our midst, but it also gave us a way to identify them so that in time perhaps we can eliminate them once and for all. January 6th showed us what part of our country truly is and what they will do when they feel they no longer have to wear the mask of social civility. But it also showed us what we have to push back even harder against. History will remember what happened that day, not only because it was a historical event, but because all of us saw it and remember what happened, what actually happened, not the propaganda those on the right and in the White House are trying to push as the new reality and retroactively erase and rewrite the history of that day. When we're told not to forget January 6th, it's not just not to forget the event as it happened, but also to not forget how it made us feel, because they can change the words on a page, but they can't change the reality and the feelings that that event evoked. What happened 5 years ago today was indefensible, and the fact that there are still those who attempt to do so to this day really shows not only how deep into the hole we've fallen, but how much work it will be to get back out. January 6, 2021 will be condemned by future generations. I only wish it could be more condemned by the current ones. Maybe on the 10th anniversary, things will be different. I can only hope. Alright guys, that'll be it for this episode of A Slice of News. I've been your host, Mr. Slice, and until next time, when I cut you off, another slice of news. And don't forget to rate and review this show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.